we have a special guest, and naturally, we're talking about and bringing focus to the conditions at Clayton County Jail. And certainly, certain parts of people's stories begin way before they get to the jail to land them there. So we have an interesting story, and we have many of you may know her. We have Dee Dee Parker here. I'm going to go ahead and let my brother go ahead and do the honors. Retired Sheriff Victor Hill. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. Well, we're honored to have Dee Dee Parker here. Dee Dee Parker reached out to me, and let me say this: there's a lot of people who've reached out, and if you're watching, you will have your chance to come on the show and get to have your chance to. Dee Dee's story is compelling. I'm not gonna say it's more compelling than anybody else's story because I know y'all had some things to say too. It's very very compelling. I think what she proves is this: uh, we're dealing with a professional woman, a Clayton County resident for 20 years, a voter that votes consistently. And this proves that anybody can end up in a situation where they end up in the county jail. We're not talking about a career criminal, which, of course, some of them we want to have them on the show too because they got an interesting perspective. But we're not talking about someone that has a series of arrests, has been in and out of jail. This is a person that ended up in a crazy situation with the crazy legal system, and that's a whole nother show for another time, and ends up in the county jail for 2 weeks based on a very dysfunctional system on how they work and everything like that. So it's very, very interesting to hear this story. Also, we're talking with a woman, so she was on the female side. And
Yeah.
that we haven't got a lot to see. We've seen a lot of it with the males. I think the young man Tommy G did something with the females, was kind of short. So we're going to really get a inside look of what the Clayton County Jail is like from Ms. Parker's perspective. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so honored to be on your show. Whew, a lot to unpack today.
Sure, sure. I tell you what, I'm gonna kind of let you open up and tell us, and of course we got questions to ask as well too. But we're gonna let you start. When was it that you spent these 2 weeks at the Clayton County Jail?
October 17th, and I was released on October 31st. My charges were dismissed. I was actually the detective who put me there, came and got me himself. So I was released, no bond, no bail, no court date.
Interesting. That's on Halloween,
Right. Of
right?
all the days. Right.
Right, right. Because it's like you were released from a haunted house.
Right. Exactly. It definitely was a haunted house.
So
Uh,
tell us. So tell us. So let's talk about. So your case is a whole show in itself, and we'll get to that, and that kind of shows other things that I often talk about, the how dysfunctional the DA is in the situation there. But let's talk about your experience at the Clayton County Jail. Walk us through. You're going to jail for the first time in your life. You come into the Clayton County Jail. Start and tell us what it was like when you were walking in, booked in, and kind of take us through that and give us an inside of the Clayton County Jail.
Absolutely. Like you said, I've been a resident of Clayton County for the past 20 years. Never went to jail, never been in trouble. Graduated from CAU, Clark Atlanta University. So to have this happen to me was a horrifying experience. When I first got in and booked into the system, they immediately call one of your family members. Not calling on your behalf, calling because somebody is trying to scam one of your family members. My mother was actually scammed out of $1,000 from somebody in the intake line. Um, like I said, immediately once I was booked, fingerprinted, took the photos. Somebody was calling her line, and she, had no idea that her daughter had even been arrested. So she's thinking, "Oh my gosh, I need to send this money over." So she sent
So
it.
slow that down 1 second. So something you're saying very interesting. I hate to interrupt, but let's
Hmm.
deal with the timeline here.
Yes.
You just got to the jail,
Yes.
right? So it's not like you've been around other inmates, and and you got to see cell phones and whatever. So that means that there had to be someone that booked you in, a clerk or something, that took your information in order to do this extortion to your mother.
Absolutely.
Right.
I don't know who it was, but it was somebody from that intake line. Again, she had no idea that her daughter was even being arrested or was in jail until she received a phone call from somebody pretending to be from the Clayton County Jail saying, "Hey, this is what your daughter is being charged with, and we can help you. This is how much. If you send us, we can get her a bond." So she sent the money thinking that, okay, well, if I send this money, this is going to help my daughter, not knowing that these people were scamming her.
So $1,000 gone.
Gone. And she called to report the issue, and they just treated it like nonchalantly, like, oh, well, it wasn't a big deal.
And let me guess, she called the sheriff's office, and they were the
She did.
ones that was nonchalant, right?
Yes,
Let me
she
just
did.
throw this in there because I get a lot of calls about stuff like this, and I encourage people to file a police report with the Clayton County Police Department, in hopes that maybe their CID will actually do an investigation. Of course, there's politics involved, but at least you got a case number from an outside agency, and perhaps, hopefully there'll be some movement on that. But keep going.
I think she did all that, and she was pretty much dismissed. Like, oh, okay, well, what do you want us to do? The money is gone. She tried to report it to her bank. She tried to report it to her credit card company, and they would not give her the money back. So she was just basically out of the money.
So did she only call the sheriff's office? Did she call any other jurisdiction and get a case number?
No, I don't think she called any other jurisdiction to get a
Let,
case number.
let me encourage you to do this, and hopefully anyone watching this, because there's a lot of people getting scammed at the Clayton County jail like this now. And I would encourage you can call the Clayton County Police Department, get a police report. And actually, the jail actually sits inside the city of Jonesboro. A lot of people have called, and I've spoken to them, and they say, "Well, I did call," and they say, "Well, ma'am, you need to call the sheriff's office." And what I tell them is, call them and tell them, "Let me speak to a supervisor," because it's a situation where they deserve a police report because it is a crime. It's in a particular jurisdiction. And again, you're dealing with so much corruption inside the sheriff's office, and so much dysfunction. The odds of them investigating it is probably slim to none. So at least you have something to work with and can document what number it came from in case anybody ever tries to trace those phones. But keep going.
I think she even tried to call them back, and the guy answered and hung up on her. Like, was like, "Hey, you said you worked here and you took my money. Give me my money back." And he hung up on her, the person that was scamming her. So
Right. And she sent the money through Cash App, right?
she did.
Yeah, so let's try and get a police report, because if an investigator, if someone really investigates, then they should be able to trace that Cash App.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will let her know because she's the one that lost out on her money, $1,000. They tried to do it again when because I did get wrongfully detained by the Clayton County Police for a second time. And they tried to do it again. This time she was aware of what was going on. And I'm not 100% sure if they're doing this to every inmate because when I was in there, I did ask, other inmates had this happen to them, and some of them said no, they know better. They would never do this. So I don't know if they're picking and choosing who to do this to or what is happening.
All right, but this is very consistent with other complaints that I've been getting, and of course, and I haven't covered this yet, but I will probably this week. There are even people getting their property stolen and sold to inmates. And Jerome, I hadn't even had a chance to talk to you about that. You got
Mhm.
inmates walking around in regular clothes, name brand clothes, and it appears that they're getting these clothes from property to wear, and folks have been sending me pictures of it. It's something I haven't even had a chance to get because I'm getting so much bombarded because there's so much going on there.
Mhm.
So now let's get back to you, Miss Parker. So
Yes.
again, you never been arrested before. You're at the Clayton County Jail, and I think it's important for a lot of people to understand. You sometimes you hear these things out there. Well, they shouldn't be in jail anyway. Anybody can end up in jail. and
Yes.
a traffic ticket or something like that. There are people, professional people like you, that end up there all the time. They forget to pay a ticket or whatever. So I mean, we just, ironically, the sheriff's wife had got to pay a ticket and had to go turn herself into Henry County. But I assure you, she didn't have to go through what you did, because
No.
strings were pulled. So it shows it can happen to anybody. But there's been a person that went to the Clayton County Jail on a traffic charge and came out in a body bag. That's just how serious this is. So go ahead and tell us about life there for the next 2 weeks.
Just in inhumane conditions. I would not wish any of those conditions or any of that on my worst enemy. We would go days without water. We would ask the COs, "We need water. Can you please bring us water?" And then they said they would bring the water, and then they would never return with water. I remember it was at least 48 hours that I hadn't drank any water, and at this point, I was dehydrated. So
Why
the only
wasn't there any water?
they just never brought back. So they give you these Gatorade containers, the orange and yellow containers, and they fill them with water. They just didn't bring back the water. I can't make an excuse on why they didn't bring the water. They never just brought back the water. Uh,
Was there any water in the sink inside the cells?
we were forced to drink out of shower water. That was probably to I was told probably was the cleanest water that we can drink of, and that water isn't even 100% clean. To be forced to drink shower water and, there's alleged plumbing problems already at Clayton County. The water, I could taste the minerals in the water myself. It again was inhumane. I say that if you wouldn't let your animal drink out of a faucet or a shower, why would you think it would be okay for a human being to be subject to that? So
I
that's what
agree.
we to. In order to stay hydrated, you had no other choice. You either had to drink out of the faucet or you had to drink out of the sink. I believe some drank from the toilet because again, we're depriving you of water, and we asked, and they said, "We're gonna bring the water, we're gonna bring the water," and then they never bring the water. And then sometimes when they do bring the water and the water jugs, like I said, it's a Gatorade jug, orange, yellow. Some of those jugs have mold in them. So they're not even 100% safe.
Got it. Interesting. What about the cleanliness?
The cleanliness, I was forced to sleep in a cell, probably I wish you could see my room, no bigger than this room, with 2 other women. I was forced to sleep on the floor next to a broken running toilet. And how they stopped the toilet from running was they would put blankets underneath the toilet so the toilet wouldn't run, but it still would run. And they reported it again, but nobody did anything about it.
Got it. Okay, it's important for people who aren't familiar with the Clayton County Jail to understand this. I am the former sheriff. I was the sheriff of Clayton County for 15 years. Uh, we didn't have any plumbing issues there. And the reason there's plumbing issues there now is because inmates are allowed to destroy the plumbing system. And that happens in several different ways. Some of them are putting things in it and backing it up on purpose. Some are doing things to certain pipes or whatever to make shanks out of it or whatever. So because there's no real discipline or control, I think that's why you're seeing this huge plumbing issue. And th- I've actually had reports of feces actually backing up into the sink.
Mhm.
Of course, we know that's happened through the toilets and
Polish.
everything like that, right?
Mhm.
So we're talking about really a biohazard situation. And for some reason, and we're going to get into that in a second, I don't know if there's been a real effort to fix it. But even if there was, if you have no control of the inmates who are destroying it, you're fixing it just for them to break it again. You're going to have to be able to control them in order for that to happen. uh, I'm not sure what it would cost to fix it at this point. But one thing that I didn't talk about a lot, but I have been talking about recently, is the misuse of government funds. And I didn't talk about it when I first heard about it because I didn't have any receipts. And then magically receipts started showing up. So now I've been talking about that. But the sad part about it is the amount of money that's being spent on all types of things, from cars, luxury cars, Lexus, Mercedes, all type of cars given out, tailor-made suits and stuff. You know, I saw one check for $30,000 for tailor-made suits, and I don't know what the plumbing bill would be for to fix what's going on now, but let's say hypothetically it would be $30,000 to fix it. Well,
Mhm.
that money went to suits for the sheriff to wear. So it's just a deeper issue, because when I first started talking about the sheriff's office, I was only talking about incompetence. Okay, it's being ran improperly. There's safety things not being done or whatever. But now that we're starting to see the money being misused, but yet we hear about inmates not getting water, sleeping next to toilets that are running over, then we see where this money could have been used so that inmates don't have to live in that particular type of condition.
But do
So,
people even care is my question, because it seems like nobody cares about the issues going on in Clayton County, in the jail and the inmates. And everybody is not a criminal that goes to jail. And I know there are probably going to be some people on here be like, oh, well, if you didn't do anything, you wouldn't have never ended up there to begin with. I never asked to go to Clayton County Jail. I never asked for any of this. You know, I just so happened to get caught in something that had nothing and has nothing to do with me. Like I said, my charges have been dismissed. So when I hear people say, "Oh, well, you stay out of jail if you don't commit the crime if you can't do the time." Again, been living in Clayton County for 20 years. I've never been in trouble. I graduated from Clark University. I'm a tax-paying citizen. I vote, and early elections are here, people. So I encourage you, if these people are not trying to fix anything, change anything, and I've been challenging these commissioners, if they're not trying to fix anything or change anything, you're not going to receive my vote.
well,
Because
it's interesting that the two commissioners that are up, because it's staggered terms. Three commissioners come up, and then two commissioners come up every 2 years. That way, the whole board is not replaced at one time, which maybe society needs to look at that. But the interesting thing is the two commissioners that are up for election right now are actually two commissioners that voted not to give an audit to the sheriff's office. And right now the sheriff's office is not just in need of an audit, but it's in need of a forensic audit. You know, you know, I want to spend more time on what you're talking about, but I mean, I'm being sent bills at Walmart, Target, Brandsmart. Some of these bills are at a Walmart in Alabama. So a forensic audit would not just say, okay, well, this amount of money was spent here, but itemize exactly what was bought. Because let's say there were items that were bought for a female. Well, then we know that has nothing to do with the Clayton County Jail. And obviously, these things that are being bought aren't being brought back to the jail, or we wouldn't be getting the complaints that we got. So, you know, that's where it gets very, very interesting. But since you brought that up, it's interesting that there are two commissioners that have voted not to do an audit of the sheriff's office. And it's interesting why. Let me say this, and I want to cut this short because I want you to do more talking than me. But when I was sheriff, there was an audit twice.
Mhm.
There was an audit twice, and yeah, come look at it and see what you got. And matter of fact, there was an audit after accusation. I don't know if I ever told you the story, Jerome, but one of the former chairmen came up with some, hey, there's $10 million missing from the sheriff's office, and if I find out, yeah, and they found about $10 missing from a cookout that the person who did the cookout said he used it to go buy some more stuff, but you notice there's this resistance for an audit now. And anytime there's a resistance for an audit, there's a reason.
Correct.
And why would people in a public official not capacity not want to see an audit happen unless there's something to hide?
Right. That's a
Okay,
great point.
tell me what else happened there. What now? You know, here's what I'm curious about. Of course, there's been numerous stabbings, but I've never heard of a female being stabbed at the Clayton County Jail.
Well, I didn't
And that doesn't
see
mean it didn't happen because they cover up a lot of stuff. But did you see any violence?
I didn't witness any stabbings, but I did witness K2. It is running rampant in
You witnessed what? K2?
K2.
Okay.
Yes. It is running rampant in Clayton County. Like, I don't know who's supplying it. I have a good clue who is supplying it. But day and night, I mean, those females were fiending for K2 and they were able to get it. Bed bugs, lice was definitely a thing. The second time they were on lockdown for 22 hours because they said that they were cleaning a portion of the cells because they reported lice in the cells. So there again, it is a serious problem going on in Clayco County.
Right. Now, K2,
Hmm.
and let me tell you something about K2. Probably one of the most dangerous drugs there are. So I don't want to get too much into my story because we're your story, but to the people familiar with Clayton County, the DA and the former chairman worked on a plan in order to send me to prison so he could be the sheriff. And that prison I went to was full of K2. Now, K2, they were making it there from roach spray. 5 men overdosed on K2 while I was there. And I saw some of the most bizarre behavior from the folks that were on K2 there, from screaming all night to it's a very, very dangerous drug. And to think that it's made it to a county jail is very, very scary. Like I said, 5 people died in Arkansas when I was there from that particular drug. I'm pretty sure it was K2. Though. One of them may have been a methamphetamine. But here's what I want people to think about what you just said. I can sit here and tell everyone for a fact, and there are people who work there and witness it. Matter of fact, we had one on the show. We Roderick was on the show, and remember how I met Roderick? He thanked me for getting off of drugs. I was like, "How did I get you off drugs? I mean, I don't even know you." And he was like, "This was the only jail I couldn't get drugs in." So the time I spent here, I came off of drugs. So we had a jail that was drug free. We've given tours when I was there. We they took grand juries and said, "You're not going to smell any drugs. You're not going to see anything." So the jail was once drug free. Now it's infested with drugs.
Yes.
And we got to ask how that happened. And the same way that happened is the same way your mom got extorted from $1,000. Drugs can't float into a jail. It can only be brought in by employees. It's either guards, nurses, maintenance people, or whatever. And that's something that that's how deep the corruption is, especially with the amount of drugs that's in there now.
Yeah.
How much K2 did you see?
I mean, I witnessed the girls, especially at night, like they would be on the prowl for K2, and it would come from other like dorms or other cells. They would pass it along through like the cracks of the doors, and that's how they were getting the K2. Again, I have an idea where the K2 was being brought in from, but they were getting it from other inmates, and then they were smoking it.
Yeah,
And
I was going to ask you, how were they firing it up? And I know we got a question in the comment section what K2 is. K2 is a very powerful synthetic. It mimics THC. It's like almost like a cannabinoid. And what that drug will do, more importantly, is it's the unknown toxins in that drug. Some people will go ahead and put roach spray and a whole bunch of other stuff in there. But what it does to the central nervous system can't be untold. And it can also put you in a psychosis, if you will. So we would see that it goes by different names. It goes by spice. It goes by powder. It goes by whatever's out there. but that's what a K2 is for one of the people who've asked about that question.
And for our viewers who have not been to the courthouse or the Clayton County Jail, something that they got to understand about how crazy it is for drugs to be sold there. Okay, most jails, like take Fulton County for instance, the jail is separate from the sheriff's office. Like if you go to Fulton County, the sheriff, his office is downtown by the courthouse. And the jail is probably about, I would say, what, 10, 12 miles away on Wright Street. Okay. So the courthouse and the jail is not connected. The sheriff would have to get in his car and drive to the jail to see what's going on. Clayton County is different. The courthouse, the sheriff's office, and the jail is one building. And it was built that way on purpose. And it's actually a great idea because, I mean, most sheriff's offices have to load up inmates on a bus every day and drive them to court and drive them back. And it can be a security hazard. It could be escapes. It could be all kind of stuff. Because they're connected, the inmates can walk through a corridor and go straight up into the courtroom and back in and never have to leave the building. So it was designed, and with that type of design, there should never be an escape or any type of incident if people are doing what they're supposed to do. But of course, there's been several escapes under the guy who's a sheriff now. But I say that to say this. So the sheriff's office is there at the jail. His office, deputies' offices, the vice office is there, the fugitives' office is there. So we're not talking about a jail where just cops come and drop people off and leave. There's law enforcement. There's law enforcement there in addition to the correction officers there. The DA's office is there. And the DA has investigators that wear guns and badges too. The solicitor's office is there. They have investigators. So in this same building where the sheriff goes every day, where his deputies are every day, this amount of drugs is being sold. They're that comfortable bringing drugs there in the same building where the sheriff sits, the DA sits, and everything. And nobody acts like they can stop it or just think about that. In the same building, drugs are being sold every day, and lots of it. Everything from cocaine to methamphetamine to what you call those ecstasy X pills.
They had fentanyl too.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's impossible. That it almost seems impossible, right?
Right.
Because of the lethality of fentanyl, could take out even the COs there. So it had to be not of a strength capable of doing that naturally, because we would see more deaths, but still nonetheless, what it will just still do to your body over a period of time is just unfathomable.
Right.
And I think I saw a comment, they were lighting the K2 with the electric sockets. That's how they were getting high.
That's why I wanted to ask you, how were they infiltrating it with what type of fire source?
Yeah, they were taking an electric socket that they could find that was working, and they would light it, and then they would go in the showers or the bathroom to smoke it.
Right.
But now the females, you didn't see any violence right there, just a lot of drug usages, correct? Or did you see violence?
I didn't see any violence. I didn't witness any, just a lot of drug usage. That was my experience.
So basically filth,
inhumane.
Right, backed up toilets, bed bugs, lice, drugs, is what you experience. And I guess the amount of stabbings that's going on in the male dorms.
But we had a broken toilet, and it took them, the toilet was still broke after the maintenance man came to try to fix it. So he didn't fix anything. The fact that they're only fed twice a day, again, you can say whatever you want to, you can feel however you want to, you can say, okay, these people are criminals. I know the sheriff said this isn't Disney. Okay, I get that. It doesn't have to be Disney to make people feel like human beings. To be fed twice a day, you get a meal at 4:00 in the morning, and then you're maybe fed again at 11:30, 12 o'clock, and that's your 2 meals for the day. And then you have to make that stretch for the rest of the day. Is like, what are we doing here?
Okay, so let's get back to Disney. Did y'all
Yes.
have a TV?
No, we had no TV.
So there was no TV for y'all to watch?
No TV for us to
Okay,
watch.
the reason I'm asking that question is because if y'all were watching TV, I wanted to know if y'all had the Disney Channel, because some of these receipts that I no no you laughing, but some of the receipts I'm being sent of folks that have obviously gotten stuff through open records or whatever. He has used county funds to get the Disney bundle pack. So, I'm not being facetious or nothing, but I'm just wondering, do the people in the jail get to watch the Disney Channel, or is that
We
just for him and his people up in the suite? So I was going to ask you if y'all were watching the Disney Channel down there.
we had no TV. The TV was broke, and they didn't come and fix it. We had maybe 2 working telephones to use. So, you have broken phones. Again, I'm so speechless because I mean this whole thing has just been, a traumatic experience. Like I've even had to go through therapy because of me spending these 2 weeks in jail because of this. Because I've never been in trouble. I've never been to jail before. So my first time going to jail and it being Clayton County, like was not expecting what I was expecting. You even have some inmates who don't even are traffic offenders, traffic, or they have probation violations that are mixed in with murderers and sex offenders. And I was just like, why are you intertwined with hardened people who, even though they hadn't been charged yet, but still they were intertwined with the people who were charged with hard crimes? And go ahead.
So that brings up an interesting question I want to ask you about, because most of the information I get is about the violence and the stuff in the maelstrom. So this is really, I think you're maybe one of maybe 3 people I've spoken to about the females. Most of it is about the violence and everything in the maelstrom. But you said something interesting. I want to ask you something. Um, 8 people, as you know, have been murdered in this jail under the watch of the guy who's the sheriff now. And I can't tell you how many stabbings, aggravated assaults, and stuff like that. And I know for a fact of 2 gang rapes. That I know. I believe there's more, but I know for 2. I got a chance to talk to a mother who her son had to actually undergo surgery to repair the damage and everything, and he's having psychological issues as well too. But let me tell you something interesting. One of the guys that was stabbed, and fortunately he made it, and I think he even had an ear severed. When you talk about, and we call it in sheriff, and we call it classification, where you classify where you put people with. But it's something interesting going on at the Clayton County Jail I've never heard of in my 15 years as sheriff. Okay, they have a room, they have a dorm for LGBT. So if you're gay, you go to this particular. Okay, if you're Muslim, you go to this particular dorm. If you're and I want to be careful about this, because I've got friends who are Muslim. I don't mean anything by that, but I mean, do we have a Christian dorm? Do we have a Hindu one? Do we have a whatever? That there's kind of strange. Okay, and then furthermore, if we're going to have a housing unit just for the gay community, and no disrespect to the gay community, but what about us heterosexual men? Like, I would have loved if they would have put me in a woman's prison. I might not have came home. But here's the thing. This person that was stabbed was actually stabbed by a man he was in a relationship with.
Oh
And
boy.
so he was stabbed in a jealous fit. And so they were actually sleeping together every night, spooning or whatever. And for some reason, a person, infidelity or something like that, came up and he was stabbed. If they weren't classified that way, where, okay, well, hey, I'm gay, I get to go here. Well, hey, because if we're going to do that, then I mean, how many classifications will you have? Well, then that's another reason why some people are sleeping on the floor. Because if
Mhm.
you have a particular dorm that's not filled up because of that, you got all these empty beds. And what it's actually done is create a dangerous system and situation where this one young man lost his life. He's in there because he's in the gay community. He gets in a relationship and almost loses his life in that jail. And then when you think about that, I'm surprised that anything, nothing has come up about the, the Prison Rape Elimination Act, which is something that we had to be very careful about, you know. And now that you got people actually being gang raped, there's no way they could be following the protocol for the Prison Rape Elimination Act. Because if that jail's ran correctly, nobody should be getting raped.
So I didn't witness like stabbings, but you made a good point. I did witness girlfriend on girlfriend domestic violence. These two girls, the girlfriend, they got into a fight and she beat her up and she had a black eye. And then she was supposed to get medical, and one of the sergeants called her down to get her stuff and she wouldn't come down. So then when they went to go investigate, they saw that she had a black eye. And then because they got into a fight, they both got kicked out of that particular dorm. So I did witness that. There are a lot of couples there that be amongst us in the cell. So, and they did get into a fight. So I understand what you're talking about there.
Absolutely. Now, the way things should be classified and the way they were classified when I was there, and we had a color system. If you were there for a violent crime, you wore red. That way, an officer or anyone would know, okay, they're here for a violent offense. Because how does a violent offender look? I mean, Ted Bundy didn't look like a serial killer, but he was. Right. And then of course you got medium and you got low security. So those people are required to wear a particular type of uniform, and were required to be together. So it wasn't by religion, it wasn't by sexual preference. Because okay, let's say you have two gay men, but one is there for murder and another one's there for a bad check. How do
Right.
you justify, okay, well they should be together because they both have that particular sexual preference. And that's
Right.
how I think we're seeing a lot of this violence, because it's not being done properly. Somebody, there's a lot of drugs on that in that jail, and sometimes I wonder if the person in charge isn't on drugs himself, because that this stuff doesn't make a lot of sense to put everyone in there. Okay, for this particular religion we're going to have it, but what about all the other religions?
Right.
Again, like I said, because I mean, are we going to have a section for Christians? Are we going to have a section for Hindu? Are we going to have a section for a Buddhist? I mean, everyone has the right. That's what makes this country great. Everyone has the right to choose their religion. And even though we're Christians, we're supposed to be very respectful of other people's beliefs.
Right.
So, you know, that's a very, very, I don't even have an answer for it. It's baffling. I don't know who came up with that attitude and with that idea, unless maybe they got some K2 strips themselves. So
Yeah, it could possibly be that way. Like I said, it didn't make any sense because, when I was there, I was in with people who had simple like probation violations or just simple traffic violations. And they were intertwined with people, like I said, who had murder charges or were being charged with murder or being charged with sexual offenses. So it didn't make any sense to me either. Because I'm like, well, if you have a traffic violation, why are you in this particular unit?
what else did you observe? Is there anything else that stand out that you'd like everyone to hear about?
We talked about the bed bugs, we talked about the lice, talked about the K2.
How did you deal with the bed bugs and the lice? How were you able to protect yourself from that, or were you?
Um, so unfortunately, fortunately, I didn't get any bed bugs or lice, but I've heard horrific stories about the lice infestation. Like I said, when I went back in the second time, when I was wrongfully arrested the second time, they had just did a wipe down of that particular unit because they said it was infested with lice, and the ladies were on lockdown for 22 hours for that day until they cleaned it, until they got it situated. So I don't even
Why
know
do
if
you
they.
think that situation is there? Do you see a way to rectify it? I mean, we know there's a way, but I'm looking from your perspective, because there's there's easy way to rectify that particular situation. But what did you see, and what did you think was the cause of why there's such a lice infection and bed bug infection?
Honestly, I'm gonna probably say because they're not cleaning and doing the proper cleaning to those mats or the sheets and the things that they give the inmates. That's the only thing that I can think about, that it's not being properly wiped down or cleaned, and then they're passing it on to other inmates. Once you leave, you turn in your mat. What are they doing with these mats? What are they doing with these sheets? Are they cleaning these sheets? When I was there for the 2 weeks, I had one set of clothes I was given, and that was it. One set of clothes, one set of underwear, one set of socks. I wasn't given anything else. They didn't say, hey,
So you never got a chance to change underwears for 2 weeks?
I
Underwear
had
for
to
2 weeks?
I had to wash my underwear in the sink.
Wow.
And in my socks, in a bra. I had to wash everything. I believe it's something in the handbook, if I'm wrong, Mr. Hill, that states that they're supposed to give you those things. That is a requirement.
You're correct.
Okay. No,
You're
I never
correct.
got, never even changed uniforms.
Okay. Jerome, you got any questions?
Yeah, let's get to the lice and the bed bugs. Did it seem once an infestation happened that they were quick to go ahead and try to resolve it, or was that also met with some type of laissez-faire thought pattern?
No, laissez-faire thought pattern. Everything was laissez-faire. They just took
Okay,
their time. The CEOs, to me, it doesn't seem like they care. Everybody is a criminal, regardless of your charges, regardless if you're there for a traffic stop or a probation violation. You're a criminal in their eyes.
okay,
That's what I felt.
okay. And then the CEOs, how many did you see in any one particular shift?
In the dorms,
Hmm.
they were never in the dorms.
Okay.
There was a tower that was outside, and then we were locked inside. But we never had CEOs in the dorm, which is why I said I witnessed the whole fight by two LGBTQ women. They
I see.
fought, and nobody was there to stop it. And then they told them that, hey, a fight had happened, and nothing happened.
So you had that, and then you had pretty much you didn't observe much violence. So how was the women's pod able to? Was there a hierarchy there? Like, was it understood unwritten rules, or did somebody was able to pull you over to the side and say, "We don't do this here, we don't do that here"?
No, I just think, I didn't the only violence, like I said, I witnessed was the two girlfriends fighting. But
Hmm.
nothing was ever relayed to me like, hey, we don't do this here. We're not doing that.
Hmm.
I was even asked if I wanted drugs on my first night in. So
Okay, so it was a little bit docile in that uh,
right.
end of it. Interesting.
I was too.
Hmm. Yeah.
I was too. That was a true story. Yeah.
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 Yeah, yeah. So then the other question that I have thereafter is that did you once you started doing about a weekend, how was your mindset different? Did you have any anticipation that you would get out the week after, or one day was turned into the next, and thus you started losing hope? How was your mindset?
No, I never lost hope because I knew that I was innocent and I didn't do what they said that I did. So I tried to remain positive. Um, like like I said, I was scheduled for a court date and I didn't make it to that court date because the lead detective came himself and uh, got me. So I was
Mhm.
released, no bail, no bond, and no court date. So again, you can label me a criminal. I didn't deserve to be in Clayton County Jail. You can say
Mhm.
whatever you want.
I want to interrupt you on that because people love throwing the criminal thing around and who's a criminal and who's not a criminal and all kind of stuff like that. But it's a point I want to make about that. When I used to run the jail, there was a lot of people who were like, he treat us all like criminals, and a lot of those folks have reached out to me in recent. I've got a lot. One day we got to do a show about all the messages I get on Messenger, And there are people who were in the jail when I was sheriff and have been in the jail now. And it's very heartwarming because a lot of it was like, hey, when you were there, I hated you. I didn't like how you ran the jail. And now I understand why you ran the jail that way. There was a reason everyone had to face the wall. There was a reason, not because everyone is guilty or everyone's not guilty. It was a protection thing. It was to stop people from masturbating in front of females and fighting, and it was a control thing, which is why we had to restrain people.
Mhm.
No one was murdered during those 15 years. Nobody escaped from that jail during those 15 years. There wasn't these stabbings, it wasn't all these drugs. So there was a reason that was done to make it safe for everybody. Did it make everybody happy? Of course not. But my job wasn't to make people happy, it was to make sure they were safe and they got out of there alive. And I think, and it's heartwarming to know that so many people who are in the jail see that now who've been back because you never been to jail before, so you weren't there during that particular time. So had a professional woman like you came to the jail when I was there, you might not have liked it either because you're like, first of all, I'm innocent because you got a dysfunctional DA throwing charges around, and then all of a sudden you having to face a wall, or you having to make your bed every day, do all these other things. Well, I'm sure you probably do that anyway. But people didn't like that. But there was a reason they had to make the bed. There was a reason we did that. That we didn't have this bed bug infection. We didn't have this lice or whatever. And it's good when I come across people when I'm out and about in Clayton County, or they message me and they say, "Okay, hey, I understand it now. That's a better way to run the jail." But let me say this: even if a guy is in there for murder, the sheriff's job is to make sure he doesn't get murdered in there, or he doesn't get stabbed in there, or he's not allowed to murder anybody else or whatever. The whole jail is supposed to be ran in a way where, regardless of what you're in there for, whether you're innocent or guilty or whatever, the punishment is to serve the time. The punishment is not to be gang raped, you have your parents extorted, to be stabbed or whatever like that. And the majority of the people in there are doing just that. It's always about 10% anywhere. That number keeps coming up. There's only about 10% of these guys is running around with shanks and extorting everybody and stabbing folks. Other people in there just trying to figure out how to get out and hoping they get out alive and trying to beat their charges or whatever. Most of the people in there aren't trying to kill each other and aren't on drugs. But you got this 10%, and they're allowed to rule the jail. And in order to keep people safe from that 10%, there has to be rules enforced and things have to be done that everyone has to follow. Or those 10% will rape, rob, and murder and extort people like they're doing now. So you got to think about that. There are people who get caught up. Maybe they had a drug addiction. Maybe they wrote a bad check, and they're not in there trying to kill or rape anybody. But the time they have to spend to answer for what they did, they shouldn't have to be gang raped or murdered or have to inhale K2 fumes or whatever like that while they're there. And I think that's what Ms. Parker is trying to say. First of all, she was innocent or they wouldn't dismiss the charges. But even if she wasn't innocent, that doesn't mean that she shouldn't get a decent meal while she's there. We're not talking about caviar and ribeye steaks, but a
No.
decent meal and living in humane conditions where you don't have feces and urine coming out the toilet and bed bugs and stuff like that. And I think that's what you're trying to say.
Right. And then it's so crazy that you brought up extortion because, I meet people along this way with this journey that I'm on. And I had a lady last Friday whose son is in Clayton County Jail right now. And she said to me that her son calls her every day because he has to send him $25 because these gang members or whoever are extorting her son for $25 to the point that she had to go to the jail and said, "Hey, I can't keep giving my son 25. I can't afford it. Can you please move him to another unit?"
Exact, exactly. Before I ask something, there's a question came up. Talk about the food quality.
Oh, it's terrible. It is terrible. Like I said, you're only fed two meals for the day. You get breakfast at 4:30 in the morning, and then you're fed your lunch and dinner around 11 o'clock. Beans, basically. I was hoping for spaghetti and meat sauce, but they never had that when I was there for the 2 weeks. But beans, hot dogs, mystery meat. You basically, if you don't have commissary, you're not gonna survive. I probably lost like 10 pounds after being in there for 2 weeks.
Wow.
I want to be able to address this. So we had a commenter. I didn't put it up on the screen, and it said, "When you were in take, did you not take a shower and was given the
I did,
whites?" And
yes.
yeah, but I took that a different way, and let me go ahead and explain to the commenter that's watching this, and I want to make it very, very, very clear to them. Intake procedures, if they're not being followed, and we're going ahead and talking about all the things that are going wrong, what the hell do you think that it's going to be to the narrow, to the policy, to the books? We've been explaining the whole time here on this show that things are going haywire. What you're not going to do is come up on the show and believe that you have some type of authority about what's going on. We have the victims here. We have an individual who's a subject matter expert here, and we have people who've already walked the walls here. What's going on is a travesty. Make no doubts about that. Some of you believe that people can be treated this way, and they're not. It's not going to happen on this show, and I directly confront you each and every time, and I will, and I have no problems doing it. But if we're going to go ahead and set the bar to say, hey, guess what, everybody needs to be treated humanely, that doesn't mean that you have the right to go ahead and try to sell them in any type of way because of whatever their circumstances are. And that was my public service announcement. Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you. No, I appreciate that because you're absolutely right. Again, I've never been in trouble. I've been a resident of Clayton County for 20 years, like never been in trouble, never went to jail. So he's absolutely right to sit here and judge and say this and that. No, the conditions are inhumane. And for all of my pet lovers out there, you would not treat your animal like this. You would be ready to hang me to a cross if I did anything to your animals. To think that it would be okay to treat another human being like that is absolutely, I'm sorry.
Terrible. Right. And what we're really talking about is civil rights violations here, people. So I need you to gather in, little children's come in, and I'm going to go ahead and explain to you that when we had that is very serious what's going on right now in the Clayton County Jail. There are victims, and we have 8, not 7, not 6, not 5. One is too much. 8 people are dead because of all this nonsense. Over what? Money? Misappropriations? This is very serious. This isn't nothing to laugh at. This is nothing to go ahead and try to shame the individuals that come on here. So I say those things because a lot of you are, really getting above yourselves and thinking that, hey, guess what? It's just another person. No, 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 no. All these people matter, even the ones that did wrong and they're no longer with us.
Or maybe one day they'll get locked up for something they didn't do.
Sure.
Yeah, or end up in a situation like that. And then when they understand it, it's easy to make a judgment when you haven't been there. It's real easy to tell a boxer to keep his hand up until you're actually in that ring and you're getting punched and giving punches. So But let me say, I got a question for you. Speaking of that, I had bought a particular type of chemical and it was attached to the shower. You would turn it on, and it was a chemical that you could mix in, and that was supposed to stop, which it was very good at stopping a problem. Do you remember still? Was that there when you went there? Because obviously they're not using it anymore.
I'm
And,
not
it- and it's a separate. It was a separate thing, and it mixes in with the water. That way, it could disinfect people with lice if they have it when they first come in. Do you remember seeing anything like
don't
that?
believe I remember seeing that. I remember the showers being absolutely heinous as well, filled with
An
mold.
intake, right?
Oh, I'm talking about in in the dorms. They were
Right.
heinous.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, to the point where you don't even want to take a shower because it's like, oh, what is this? So, but yeah, I just encourage, please, don't judge a book by its cover. Like I said, everybody that has been in Clayton County that has went to jail is not a criminal. I'm by no means a criminal. Again, I graduated from Clark Atlanta University. I have a degree. I didn't ask for any of this. I wouldn't wish this on my worst. I wouldn't wish Clayton County on my worst enemy. That's how bad it is.
No, we get it. We get it. And that's the whole point of having you on the show. A person that's never been arrested a day in their life and end up in a situation like that. I know we're getting near the time, and I don't want to get on the soapbox, but I'm gonna get on it real quick. And I hope this message goes directly to the DA and everybody that was involved with her. Now think about this. They said that they were concerned about the civil rights of inmates and that I was violating the rights of inmates. Um, that I was running the jail too harsh, making folks say sir and ma'am and clean every day and make up the bed and anyone that showed signs of violence, restraining them. And they said these are civil rights violations and we've got to protect the rights of inmates. Well, I want to ask the DA, where are you at now? If you were concerned with the civil rights of 7 guys that were restrained, guys that was cutting tails off puppies and beating old women in wheelchairs. Here's a woman whose civil rights have been violated. Here's a whole bunch of people living in feces and urine. Drugs are being given to these inmates. Some have overdosed. Where are you at now? If you're really concerned about civil rights, you got a whole lot more civil rights and you got some dead bodies now. So if we cut all this craziness out, if you're really concerned about the civil rights of inmates, we need you to get out of that office and actually be the DA for a change and do something about this. Because you were very adamant about it in that situation, and no one was getting killed, no one was escaping, there was no drugs in the jail, and you claimed the jail wasn't being ran right now, right then. Is it being ran right now? And if it's not, why aren't you doing anything about it? And that's a whole nother show for another time. But look at the craziness that you caused and look at the trauma, not to mention a dysfunctional office where an innocent woman gets charged. And that's my soap opera for the day, brother. You can take over.
He's probably too busy allegedly having AI determine whether or not. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Exactly.
Yeah,
I think that we should land it where she planted the hardest.
Yeah, I think she just landed the plane. I think she did. Ms. Parker, it's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you, guys.
And peace and blessings to you. And these things, they have an amazing way of working out. And I'm sure that all of the people who are living in those conditions appreciate that someone in there had the courage to speak out and confirm what's going on in there. I know we've seen the videos, but those videos that Tommy G does, a lot of those are not downplaying it. I wanted people to see someone that's never been in jail before end up in a situation and how this can affect the everyday person. And then imagine if Miss Parker was your sister, your mother, your daughter, and you're worried about her in those conditions, worried that she could be stabbed, worried that she could be killed, or just worried that she could catch some type of biological hazard, something that could well lead to death as well.
Correct.
So, and I think you did an excellent job of doing that. I'm glad your case got dismissed. I hope you pursue that. And again, we're honored to have you on the show. And once that's pursued, I'm sure we'll have you back because that's another incredible story that like I say, unfortunately the dysfunction is not just in the sheriff's office, but we probably have me and my friends in Fulton County, we argue all the time which is the worst jail, which is the worst DA. I think they know I'm winning that argument now. So there you go.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and land this plane. Many of you are subscribing, liking, and certainly commenting. We need you to go ahead and share what we have here today. We certainly want to go ahead and thank Dee Dee Parker, and we hope that not only justice comes to her, but also to her mother. Unfortunately,
Absolutely.
people are getting violated outside of this jail too. So, with that being said, I want to thank each and every one of you, and please like, subscribe, and certainly comment. Talk to you soon.
Thank you guys.